But out of all the quote-unquote male friends that Herb Baumeister had, only one who visited the farm survived to tell the tale. And it's from this man, Tony Harris, that we get even a peek into Herb Baumeister's serial killer M.O.
Was very similar to this one survivor of John Wayne Gacy that we had.
Yep. Now, Tony Harris didn't know Herb Baumeister as Herbie from the thrift store. Instead, Tony knew him as Brian Smart, a closeted gay Indiana Republican with leathery skin who hung around a gay bar called the 501 Tavern.
This just shows gay people, they'll buy, new clothes.
Yeah.
They're not going to the thrift store. They'll say what I've seen.
Yeah.
Now, after Tony and Herb had a brief chat one night at the 501, Herb asked if Tony wanted to go out to what he said was his employer's house for a drink and a swim. This was, of course, Herb's place at Fox Hollow Farm, which was empty that night because his wife and kids had gone out of town, as they often did. They had to have gone out of town a lot. 25 guys.
Yeah.
That's 20. That's 25 trips out of town. I think every single time his wife and kids left, like they go up to his mother's place. She had a condo on the lake, like 100 miles north.
That was their vacation spot.
Every single time they left, he went, picked up a guy and killed him.
Yeah. I think that he may have done it while they were in the house too. I think that he brought him downstairs.
So? Maybe.
I think that this was the denial that was happening in this house was at it's just the most denial that there's ever been.
Yeah.
Like besides Michael Jackson's nanny. It's like the most denial that's ever existed.
I'd put it on par with like Jerry Brudos.
Yeah.
The amount of denial that his wife had about it. He was killed. Jerry Brudos was a serial killer. He was killing women in his garage when his wife lived with him. Yeah. Like he was making casts out of the breasts that he had cut off of women he killed and putting them on his mantle, and she was just like blank, not accepting it at all.
Same, I feel like predators are really, really good at reading people. Yeah. They're extremely able to know who is going to fucking come at me. You're also talking this time period, which was like, there was still that like full stripe of misogyny. Obviously it's still embedded in the country, but wives are supposed to listen and not question their husbands.
Yeah.
And these women were born with that put inside of their brains. And so they were just kind of like under this idea of like, well, if he's paying for stuff and he's not beating me, that's the bar, right? Yeah. Which is not healthy. And we need to change in this country.
Mm-hmm. He was awful too. So she was probably happy to not be around him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only guy who I think like truly pulled it off, like where the wife had no idea, and it's like, okay, like I get it, was Dennis Rader. I think his wife had zero idea that he was BTK.
He was such a meticulous control freak.
Yeah.
It was his whole life was his balancing his second life and his first life.
Yeah. Now, Tony was well aware of the danger of going to a stranger's secluded house, especially considering how so many gay men in Indianapolis had gone missing over the last decade or so. This was 1994, and Herb had committed as many as 20 murders by this point.
And that's not including the I-70 Strangler.
That is including the I-70
You think
Strangler.
so? Yeah.
94? Yeah, he'd only been at the house for a few years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
3 years.
Yeah. Now, one of Tony's friends, Alan Goodlett, had actually been one of the men who'd gone missing, but Tony nevertheless rolled the dice that night with Herb. Well aware of the risks, Tony insisted that he ride out to Herb's farm in Herb's car. So if Tony were to say go missing, his abandoned car would serve as a marker that he'd disappeared.
In a weird way, it's like good that he did this.
Yeah. It's just this person knew that they were entering into a risky situation, which they might have found erotic.
Some people do.
And you go and you, But that's also, if you're going to be risky erotically, then do some safety measures in there.
Mm-hmm.
Have a spotter. Yeah, phone a friend.
Now, once they got to the house, it was completely dark. Herb said that the power was off upstairs, but the basement was fully juiced, and that's where Herb had his indoor pool.
Set the scene here, Marcus. Like you're in the middle of the fucking Indiana woods.
Yeah.
You've driven out in the middle, because that was the thing.
It's the suburbs.
You're in the suburbs, but still, it's like a 30-minute drive.
Yeah.
It's a huge property.
Huge property. You were just in downtown Indianapolis, wherever their city was. They were hanging out. Right? Normal gay bar. You're going to go to a second location, which we always say never do. Never go to a second location. You're out in the middle of the fucking woods.
Yeah.
You see this mansion in the middle of nowhere. Big land.
Broken down man.
Broke already.
Disgusting looking.
Yes. Yeah. There was pit. Like, there's things in there that are already super weird. He's got stuff just hanging out in the fucking yard, right? Like, all of his treasures and his junk is all just kind of hanging out in this yard.
It really is Addams Family like.
It's very scary. You're driving in, and then you go into his, like, he takes you through his dark house.
But he's saying it's not my house.
It's not my house.
It's my employer's house.
It's not my house. You go through this house. Reeks of piss. They'd say the whole place was horrifying. It's a
No
horror
way.
house.
This guy?
I know. But you go through this house, and he's just like, well, actually, this is not even the power's out. You got to see the pool. And then you go down to the pool, and this is what you see. This inside, this like it's all like cheesily like done with tile and shit.
Yeah. The first alarming thing that Tony noticed upon descending into the pool room were all the mannequins. 2 were upright next to the pool, 1 was face down, and another was standing off to the side wearing only a woman's wig. 4 mannequins just hanging out.
Staring.
And when Tony asked, hey, what's with the mannequins? That's kind of strange.
Yeah, well, you have all these mannequins who are.
Yeah. Herb replied that he got lonely out there and didn't like to be alone.
Bad answer.
Yes. And this is a weird thing to say, not least because Herb had said at the bar that he was only in town for a couple of weeks. And it also said that it was his employer's place. This meant that if you were following Herb's story, that he would have had to have brought the mannequins with him from another location for a 2-week stay.
Well, how do you think I save 30 minutes going either way in the HOV lane?
Yeah, exactly. You ever seen Today's Special on Nickelodeon when you were a kid? He leaves, they come alive, they have a great time at the pool, they come back, they're mannequins.
But when Herb sensed the confusion and felt the follow-up questions coming, he changed the subject to cocaine.
Yeah, it's always good. That's a good diversion. If you don't want anybody to question your audience of mannequins, always offer cocaine.
Yeah. Tony declined and played it safe with a joint, but Herb also kept pushing Tony to have a drink. Tony kept refusing, and every time Tony refused, Herb got more and more annoyed.
Because guess what was in the fucking alcohol?
Yeah, well, I mean, who knows? Because to me, it seems like alcohol was probably a part of Herb's MO.
That's what Jeffrey Dahmer did.
Either Herb counted on getting his victims drunk enough where fighting back would be difficult, or he spiked their drinks. Jeffrey Dahmer used Haldol. Yeah. But smartly, Tony kept refusing. Eventually, Herb left, and that's the thing. Anytime anyone's pushing a drink on you, say no and go away.
Just go away.
Say no and leave.
You are better off in the woods.
On foot. Just you know where the main road is. Just start walking towards the main road.
I gotta go to the bathroom and book it.
Yeah. Eventually, Herb left and returned energized, probably because he'd done a lot of cocaine in the other room.
Yeah. You know it hits you harder when you stick it in your ass.
You know what I'm saying here, mannequins? Don't you come to life tonight, mannequins, because I'm busy.
Well, as such, Herb had a case of the gacked out jabberjaws and went on and on about his mom, his dad, and being gay.
Yeah, woo.
All while Tony politely listened.
Like my shirt? Like this shirt cost me $100. Like these shoes?
No, eventually, Herb convinced Tony to take a swim. But while they were in the pool, Herb asked Tony if he wanted to see a neat trick. Ooh. This neat trick was autoerotic asphyxiation.
Ooh, that's not a trick.
And after Herb claimed that it could give a man the most intense orgasm imaginable, Tony was reluctant but intrigued. So he agreed to try it. Taking a length of hose, Herb wrapped it around Tony's neck gently at first, but then he began tightening the hose more and more until Tony felt lightheaded. Realizing that he was in trouble, Tony pretended to pass out and fell limp into the water. After Herb relaxed, Tony jumped up and screamed that Herb was the one who'd killed his friend Alan, who'd killed all the men who'd gone missing. Tony then started choking Herb, who turned blue, passed out, and slipped under the water. But like a monster in a horror movie, Herb shot out of the water moments later, coughing, and after a bit, he smiled at Tony and said, quote, this is what Tony said that Herb said.
Wow, you could have killed me, but that was so cool. It was such a rush. But you're supposed to hold me above water when I lose consciousness.
Like just fucking blanket on it, just like, oh yeah, no, this is just something that happens all the time. That was great. Let's keep going.
Good job. Yeah. Well, great deflection, to be honest with you.
He legitimately, he understood what he just did because he couldn't get him fully in, and then he didn't kill him. And now it's too late. I guess he could have killed him. But what's weird is I think that when he came back and choked him, he was like, oh, this guy's cool.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this guy fucking gets it.
Yeah,
or he's actually like stronger than him.
Yeah,
And not hammered. Also,
and not super hammered.
Yeah, he realizes like this isn't going to work, so like
I guess we'll just have normal sex tonight.
Well, perhaps relaxing a bit at Herb's nonchalant attitude, Tony listened as Herb gave specific instructions on how you're supposed to do autoerotic asphyxiation, saying that he should see how beautiful it looks when someone's lips change color when you're doing it to them. To demonstrate in a better atmosphere, Tony and Herb got out of the pool and sat on a couch, where Herb pulled out a necktie and told Tony to choke him while he jerked off. He said, "This is how you do it." Tony obliged, then they switched. Tony pretended to fall unconscious again, then started arguing once more about Herb possibly killing Tony's friend Alan. Now, since Tony had gotten a ride with Herb, he agreed to spend the night but faked falling asleep.
Can you imagine sitting in that bed where you just know that all the mannequins are awake and the raccoons are in the ceiling and everything smells like piss?
It fucking reeks.
I think he kept him downstairs in the basement the entire time.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, once Herb was out, Tony called his sister to tell her that the guy he was with wasn't right. He then stayed up all night, trying to work up the courage to find some trace of his friend Alan. The next morning, though, Herb went out to run an errand, which left Tony alone in the house to finally explore the upstairs in the light of day. What struck him, he said, was how messy and disorganized it was, but he specifically noticed how much video recording equipment and videotapes Herb had in his possession. He thought he was a film producer of some kind.
Not good.
Why would he leave him there?
This was the weird thing about Herb Baumeister, and we'll get into it a little bit later. He left everything everywhere. He just didn't care.
I view him in what they talk about with psychopaths of like, we talk about it's shallowness. So there's a thing there where with psychopaths, that's like one of the main issue is that they can't feel feelings. So they need excitement and they crave excitement and some form of like they want to be pushed into feeling something. And so I think with him is that you see it with the I-70 Strangler murders and these murders and the way he disposed of the bodies. He did it in the most lazy way possible. And I don't think it's like, number one, it's because humans are not human to him. Humans are objects. It's he views everything as a 2D paper cutout, right? Like nobody has you don't have a soul to him. And so you're just somebody he can come on. And so he does that. And then once it's out of him, the idea that he goes away, that Herb Baumeister that goes away, this shadow Herb steps forward, does the thing in a fugue state, comes at the end of it, he's just like, that's done. And then he just sort of moves on. Yeah. And so like all of that stuff that night, I think he was just like, just having a normal day, met this guy, don't know this guy, like literally just kind of, I'm now going to go put my Herb mask on and I'm going to go to the store.
Finally, though, Herb came home and offered to take Tony back to his car at the 501 Club. Once they returned, they exchanged numbers, and just before leaving, Herb said, quote,
"I had a really good time. You really know how to play, sport."
And then said, "See you later."
Bye. See you soon.